As Zayn made his way from the dragon prison to the burial mountain, where the Five Spirit sect was located, his anxiety grew with every step. It was customary for anyone who broke through the foundation level to register with the halls of foreign affairs, but Zayn couldn't shake the fear that the temple might reject him as an inner disciple. Yet the vital energy he now possessed gave him confidence that he could claim his rightful place in the Five Spirit sect. Slowly but surely, he was getting closer to his retribution. A huge fog blanketed the top of Burial Mountain as Zayn arrived at its foot. He began his climb at dawn, and by the time the day broke, he found himself standing before the massive wooden doors of the academy. Two stern-looking guards stopped him at the door, but when they saw Zayn standing confidently and asking for an audience with Vaniel, the then president of the Five Spirit Sect's Hall of Foreign Affairs, they realized he was no ordinary boy. Hesitatingly, they escorted him to Vaniel's chambers. Zayn trusted Vaniel. After all, it was Vaniel who had given him the five-element fragments, critical to his success in breaching the foundation level and creating a strong vital energy shield. As Zayn entered the chambers, Vaniel stood gazing out the window, seemingly deep in thought. He turned back and saw Zayn standing there, greeting him with a smile and the customary bow of respect.
Good day to you, sir. I have come to register myself as an inner disciple.
Vaniel's surprise was evident. A look of disbelief washed over his face, as if he hadn't expected to see Zayn again so soon. He noticed the gleam in Zayn's eyes. Zayn seemed more confident, more powerful. For a moment, Vaniel just stared, then suddenly regained his composure.
You have broken through.
Before Zayn could respond, Vaniel's excitement and disbelief spilled over. Zayn had never seen Vaniel so animated. His calm demeanor shattered like a mirror.
Tell me, when did this happen?
It was not long ago today that I finally broke through the foundation level, sir. Thus, I have now come to you to register myself and report this event to you. Isn't it a rule of the Five Spirit Sect that anyone who breaks through the foundation level before the age of 18 can claim their opportunity to be promoted as an inner disciple?
Yes, indeed.
Vaniel studied Zayn intensely, all while smiling. His eyes squinted, trying to read Zayn's thoughts. The vital energy within Zayn was completely withdrawn, with no trace leaking out. Vaniel admired Zayn's control over his energy, but something about Zayn remained mysterious, opaque, impenetrable. Zayn's arrival had certainly shocked Vaniel, but he didn't let it show. Zayn's power was palpable, and this made Vaniel even more curious. A wide grin appeared on Vaniel's face as he conjured a voice flare talisman, murmuring a few words before a magic flame leaped from his hands and flew out the chamber's window to its destination.
Zayn Martell, I have reported this matter to the elders. In the meantime, please grab a seat. Let me prepare some tea and snacks for you.
Relieved, Zayn promptly sat down, nodding in acknowledgement. He wasn't one for ceremonies or small talk. He was a man on a mission. He grabbed an exotic-looking fruit from a nearby basket and began eating. It had been a long time since he'd indulged in such delicacies. Vaniel grabbed a seat next to Zayn and began speaking patiently.
Now that I've relayed your request to the elders and deans, it's entirely up to them to take you as an inner disciple. Your achievements have been shared, and soon you can expect a response. But whether they wish to accept an apprentice is unknown to me. If they are unwilling, as per the rules, I can only assign you to Master Evans. I hope there are no hard feelings if it comes to that.
Vaniel didn't want to set high expectations for Zayn, but was also careful not to seem unsupportive. Zayn knew the limitations Vaniel faced. If the elders chose not to select him, Vaniel couldn't do much. Zayn nodded, accepting Vaniel's position.
Vaniel can't make the elders accept me as their disciple at Sword Point. The elders have more authority. They make their own decisions.
Suddenly, a fist-sized ball of fire floated into the room and hovered before Vaniel, who reached out to grasp it. The flame disappeared into his hand. Vaniel's eyes brightened, and he exclaimed with excitement.
Good news, Zayn! The Dean of the Azure Dragon Academy, along with the other 4 elders, want to see you in the Dragon Spirit Hall.
They all want to see me. Even the Dean? Could it be that Alora put in a good word for me?
It was unheard of for the 7 halls to speak on matters of the 4 great cultivation academies. Zayn felt the possibility of Alora speaking in his favor was low, but what else could explain the Dean's interest?
Don't overthink it, Zayn. The Dean has summoned you to the Dragon Spirit Hall. Hurry, I'll take you there right away.
In his excitement, Vaniel summoned the wind glider and nearly dragged Zayn onto it. The wind glider swiftly took off, exiting the hall from one of its large windows, headed for the Spirit Hall. The Dragon Spirit Hall of the Azure Dragon Academy stood atop a cliff, surrounded by jagged mountain peaks. Huge dragons lay on some of the peaks, while the height of the hill on which the hall stood made it inaccessible from below. It was an impenetrable fortress designed to protect the Academy's secrets from prying eyes and potential attacks. The only way to enter was through the sky. As they descended, they cut through a dense layer of fog surrounding the Dragon Spirit Hall. Its majestic gates were unguarded. At this height, perhaps guards were unnecessary. As they dismounted from the wind glider, Vaniel turned to Zayn.
The Dean hasn't summoned me. Only you must enter alone. Remember what I said about the temper of the Deans and the Elders. Whatever you do in there, do not offend them.
Zayn nodded vigorously and began walking toward the massive stone doors of the hall. The doors opened as he approached, and Vaniel watched as Zayn headed inside. Inside the halls of the Azure Dragon Academy, Zayn found himself in a massive empty space. Its translucent walls glinted with colorful shades. He looked up to see a huge dragon statue on the ceiling, its eyes glowing with fire as if it might come alive at any moment. Compared to the dragon prison, this hall was smaller, but its majesty rivaled any other hall Zayn had seen. At the far end, he spotted 5 figures seated at a round table and began walking toward them. As he neared, he recognized 3 men and a woman, remembering Vaniel's descriptions. The rough, burly man with a thick stubble and hairy chest was Master Evans. Next to him sat a scholarly-looking elder with closed eyes, Henry Wells. The elegantly dressed lady with a royal demeanor and a wicked smile was Ella Howard. The peculiar man with a bent nose and fiery eyes was the cunning Lane. At the center of the table sat a languid, middle-aged man, likely in his 50s with graying hair and an air of authority. Zayn concluded this must be Dean Harrison Xavier, but it wasn't the Dean who caught his attention. Behind him stood a pale figure in yellow, her face clear as porcelain, her long black hair cascading over her shoulders. Zayn immediately recognized her.
Alora, why is she here? Is she already at the 3rd stage of the foundation level? Why do I feel frightened by this knowledge?
While Zayn grappled with understanding Alora's presence, he realized that the blood herb had enhanced his sight, allowing him to gauge a person's cultivation level at a glance.
Elders and the Dean, I'm pleased to announce that Disciple Zayn has broken through the foundation level.
The hall remained silent. No one reacted or acknowledged the announcement. Henry Wells kept his eyes closed, still in a trance. The silence turned cold for Zayn as he stood awkwardly before the round table. As the Dean scanned him repeatedly with a cold gaze, Zayn felt judged. The presence of the elders unsettled him, shaking his newfound confidence. He wondered if he had been wrong to hope, if he had expected too much. Yet the fire in his heart only grew stronger. 1,000 emotions rushed through Zayn's heart as he stood in one of the great halls of the Azure Dragon Academy. His joy at seeing Alora was quickly overshadowed by the anticipation and nervousness of being in the presence of Dean Harrison and the Elder Council. He had to prove his worthiness to become an inner disciple.
Tell me about your background.
I was born in Kinter country of the Yarrow Kingdom, sir.
I sent Alora to investigate the kingdom and bring back any treasure worthy of our attention. I didn't expect she would bring us you.
The dean's sarcastic words lit up the eyes of the elders, and they began showing some interest in the proceedings.
Tell us about your cultivation.
4 stars.
A collective groan echoed through the hall. Whatever interest Zayn had managed to arouse was now gone. The anticipation and curiosity shown by a few elders before had all but vanished. Even Dean Harrison, who had begun to show some interest in Zayn, now seemed disappointed and disinterested. Seeing the council's reactions, Zayn frowned slightly, feeling humiliated. Zayn knew that entering the academy as an outsider without a 5-star talent was nearly impossible, but his real talent, the potential to use the rare sea-engulfing curse and repair his dragon body, was not yet known to the elders. He knew that with time, achieving a 5-star talent was within reach. However, today, Zayn's potential wouldn't help him. He needed to prove himself without a doubt. Allura watched all this unfold with great apprehension. Seeing Zayn needed support, she stepped forward and held the dean's hand before speaking.
Sorry to interrupt, but didn't you promise to consider Zayn's candidature seriously? You've only asked about his 4-star talent, but there is so much more to him. Zayn is the youngest alchemist I've ever seen, and his achievements in the art of the sword are also commendable. Though I am not from the Hall of the Holy Sword, and I might not fully understand.
Didn't I hear correctly that the Hall of Elixirs got into a big fight with the Hall of the Holy Sword over young Zayn here?
Seeing Allura speak so freely with the dean made Zayn realize that the great dean of the Azure Dragon Academy was actually the foster father of Allura. He chided himself for thinking of her as a mere noblewoman. Dean Harrison then turned to Zayn, his expression cold.
Zayn Martell, you have only one chance. Whether you can seize it or not depends entirely on you. Attack with your full might.
The sudden change in the dean's demeanor stunned Zayn for a moment, but he quickly recovered, feeling a deep sense of gratitude toward Allura for her support. The very next moment, Zayn's posture changed completely. His restrained movements gave way to a flood of vital energy that flowed out of him. Dark, silvery, lightning-like energy emanated from his body, transforming into streams of lightning. Even after using so much energy, Zayn had only exhausted half of a single orb. Roaring with emotion, he held out his hands and conjured a dark silver thunder spear. A deafening explosion shook the hall as Zayn clenched it tightly for all to see. The spear, made of pure vital energy, grew in size and seemed almost solid. Zayn's control over the energy was phenomenal at that moment. The Hall of the Dragon spiral rang with the sound of thunder as Zayn took a special stance and hurled the lightning spear with great force. The spear neared Dean Harrison and exploded a few feet from the council table. Tiny sparks flew in all directions as a round mass of dark silver lightning, about 10 feet in diameter, formed and hung in the air. A violent gust of wind swept through the hallway, toppling everything not fixed to the ground. With a flick of his wrist, Dean Harrison countered the shockwave from Zayn's vital energy blast. His outstretched fingers pacified the burst of lightning and thunder with ease. Seeing how easily Dean Harrison dealt with his powerful burst of energy surprised Zayn, who stared at Dean with an open mouth.
I thought with so much power I wouldn't lose against even a 2nd-level practitioner. How wrong was I to imagine that? Even after so much progress, my powers are no match for the Dean, an adept of the intermediate level. Was this the true strength of an intermediate level practitioner?
The spectacle put on by Zayn had aroused curiosity in the room. Even Dean Harrison's face had a sly grin as he sat amused in his chair. Zayn's power had impressed him somewhat.
Your cultivation talent is average, but your attacking method is quite vicious. The move you displayed was deadly indeed. Had it been a 1st-grade foundation-level martial artist, your attack would have been enough to skin them alive.
The Dean's appreciative words lifted Zayn's spirit as a glimmer of hope emerged within him. Lanewine, who had been watching Zayn with intense focus, seemed to have noticed something. He suddenly frowned and spoke in a hoarse voice.
Did you practice your moves from the Book of the Divine Thunder?
Lane's words attracted everyone's attention, and they looked at Zayn for a response. Zayn's demeanor turned cold, as if trying to hide a secret.
He's asking me about the great book I found. Should I tell him or not? Surely it's futile to hide anything from these old fellows at the intermediate level. I must reveal the truth now.
The Book of Divine Thunder was given to Zayn by Alora as a reward for his alchemist skills. The council was unaware of this. After carefully weighing his options, Zayn decided to tell the truth.
Yes, sir. It is indeed the Book of Divine Thunder that I have used to cultivate this power.
Zayn felt a heavy burden lift from his chest as he admitted this fact to the elders. However, on hearing his admission, the elders exchanged confused looks. Zayn then looked at Alora, who had her hands up to her mouth and stood gaping at Zayn in surprise. The Book of Divine Thunder was notoriously difficult to practice. Everyone present had once tried to master its techniques, but none had succeeded. Neither did any of them have such a powerful dark sky thunder technique as Zayn had just displayed in the hall. Elora's excited squeal broke the brief silence.
Did you hear that? Zayn has successfully practiced and mastered the Dark Sky Thunder technique from the Book of the Divine Thunder. Doesn't that make the test of the 4-star talent redundant? He has surely surpassed the talents shown by anyone at his grade by far.
Dean Harrison was still a bit doubtful and hesitated before believing what his eyes had witnessed. In his dilemma, he asked Zayn again.
I have known all kinds of thunderbolt techniques recorded in the Book of the Divine Thunder. How come I have never witnessed a silver lightning like yours? How is that even possible? Would you care to explain, young man?
Zayn had no inkling of what the book meant to them. More importantly, his secret of the dragon prison and the mysterious origins of his learnings needed to remain hidden for his safety and plans. He thought of a proper answer.
As I was cultivating, my vital seed was in chaos, unstable. I believe that's what caused the Sky Thunder to differ from the usual techniques given in the book.
Zayn's half-baked answer failed to completely satisfy the curiosity of the 5 elders. However, none could think of any other possible reason for Zayn's special powers, so they accepted his explanation.
In that case, it makes perfect sense. This young man is a blessing in disguise. Zayn, your mastery of the Book of the Divine Thunder shows that your practice of the foundation level is indeed perfect. From today onwards, I declare you my 10th nominal disciple. My first 3 personal disciples will also serve as your mentors. My 10 nominal disciples shall gather on the 1st and 15th day of the lunar month.
Dean Harrison's voice boomed through the Dragon Spiral Hall and fell on Zayn's ears like rain in a desert. These were the words he had desperately wanted to hear, but never dared to imagine would come true. His mind raced with thoughts, his heart thumping with ecstasy. He craved a master's guidance so much over the past few years, and now he had Dean Harrison as his mentor. In martial arts cultivation, a mentor's guidance was invaluable. Zayn knelt down on one knee and bowed his head in gratitude.
I, Zayn Martell, am honored to have you as my master.
Zayn's happiness was matched only by Alora's. A charming smile adorned her beautiful face as she looked at him with pride. As Zayn stood before the elders, a wave of relief washed over him. His introduction to the council had gone well. His demonstration of the Sky Thunder technique had impressed them, and now Dean Harrison had inducted him as his 10th nominal disciple. Gratitude filled his heart, gratitude to both the gods and Alora. But Alora wasn't done yet. Just as Zayn thought his admission was complete, she spoke up.
Oh? By the way, I remember that you practice swordsmanship. Why don't you use a sword?
Zayn froze at her words. He hadn't expected this topic to come up before the council. Yet he understood that Alora only wanted the best for him, and that showcasing his sword skills could earn him further favor in the academy. After a moment of thought, he confessed.
I broke the Sky Sword during my fight with Yanni.
Father, young Grandmaster Zayn's sword skills are quite outstanding. Why don't we let him go to the Hall of the Holy Sword to study? He will definitely be of great help.
Dean Harrison playfully tapped Alora's head, his voice laced with a hint of envy.
You've barely known him for a few days. Why rush to aid an outsider? Even as a master, I'm not as eager to test him as you. Moreover, the Hall of the Holy Sword is the backbone of the 5 Spirit sect. I can't simply admit him based on your recommendation, can I?
The scholar, Henry Wells, who had been reclining with his eyes closed, finally opened them. He regarded Zayn with a lazy gaze, then produced a seemingly ordinary short sword from his sleeve. Despite its appearance, the sword radiated a boundless power, its hilt intriguingly bent. With a swift motion, Elder Wells flung the blade toward Zayn. It transformed into a streak of light, embedding itself into the ground right before him.
Disciple Zayn, since Alora is vouching for you, let's see what you're made of. Draw the sword. If you can neutralize the energy I infused into it and retrieve the short sword from the ground, you'll earn the right to enter the Hall of the Holy Sword.
Standing over the short sword, Zayn could feel the potent sword will emanating from the hilt. Invisible currents gathered around the blade, and wisps of mist gradually enveloped it. Meanwhile, a young woman, Bella, looked on with concern, her brow furrowed.
You once resided in the Hall of the Holy Sword, boasting unparalleled mastery of the art of sword. Moreover, do not forget that it is Elora who has recommended Disciple Zayn. I'm warning you. Should you try to disgrace him, even if I let you off, Elora won't forgive you.
Zayn flushed at her words, his embarrassment clear. Elora's cheeks turned a deeper shade of red with shyness, though she quickly covered Bella's mouth with a playful snort to hide her true feelings.
Madam Howard, please stop jesting. I'm merely admiring young Grandmaster Zayn's talents. It is only right that the Council evaluates the true extent of his potential.
Laughter echoed through the Dragon Spiral Hall. Zayn struggled to focus, his eyes sharpening as he reached for the hilt of the short sword. Instantly, a powerful sword aura surged from the blade toward his mind. He saw an image of a majestic eagle, its fiery talons tearing through everything. A sharp pain coursed through his body, and he dropped to his knees, his face paling. But then, with a steely resolve, he summoned all the sword wisdom he had learned from the Dark Shadow. Frost began to form in the surrounding air as Zayn concentrated. The temperature in the Dragon Spiral Hall plummeted to freezing.
This is...
Henry Wells's doubt turned to shock, beads of sweat forming on his brow. He felt the sword aura he had imbued being absorbed by something, dissipating. In Zayn's mind, he condensed his refined sword wisdom into a formidable dragon, which swiftly devoured the eagle. Delving deeper into the sword, he dispelled all remnants of the sword's will. Zayn pulled the short sword effortlessly from the ground. Even Dean Harrison was astonished. The four elders rose from their seats, highly intrigued by what they had just witnessed.
Henry?
Dean Harrison frowned, casting a questioning glance at Henry. Elder Wells, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, could only nod. Shock gripped the onlookers. Could someone who effortlessly dispelled the sword will of an elder at the intermediate level be considered ordinary?
Zayn, unleash your most potent attack on me immediately. Don't hesitate, hold nothing back.
Zayn complied, channeling his vital energy into the short sword. He raised it high, and a formidable sword aura emanated from the blade. A brilliant beam of light soared into the sky. Light and shadow intertwined, swirling like a vortex. Amidst this dance, the dark silver slash cleaved through the air, reaching Dean Harrison's rising vital shield. The sword energies clashed and shattered instantly, the excess vital energy quickly dissipating into the air. Dean Harrison's expression grew grave. After a prolonged silence, he finally spoke. Master Henry, grant Disciple Zayn the access token and instruct him to report to the Hall of the Holy Sword. Additionally, procure a formidable sword from the Hall for him, provided he's capable. Henry Wells produced an energy sigil with a wave of his hand, directing it into Zayn's energy field. With that, Zayn received the access token for the Hall of the Holy Sword. Following Dean Harrison's directives, he departed to procure a suitable blade.
This lad is indeed a sword prodigy. His recent attack was formidable. With careful cultivation, he might even be a candidate to unlock the sealed sword in the future. It's a pity his talent falls short.
Bella chuckled, offering her perspective.
Madam Bella, why do you always jest at my expense? Zayn is simply someone I admire for his talents.
Her flushed face quickly turned cold and she shook her head, blinking her beautiful eyes in a taunting manner.
Zayn and I are just fellow disciples. I don't care for anything beyond that.
Bella burst into laughter, her high-pitched laughter echoing through the Dragon Spiral Hall. After receiving further instructions from Dean Harrison, Zayn departed for the Halls of Foreign Affairs with Vaniel. At the Hall of Foreign Affairs, Vaniel escorted Zayn. Initially, Vaniel assumed Zayn would be placed under Master Evans, but he was astounded to learn he was accepted by Dean Harrison himself. Zayn was equipped with a wind glider, a genuine energy artifact, and an inner disciple token for residence at Azure Dragon Academy. After these initiations, he hastened to the Hall of the Holy Sword. Riding the wind glider, a newfound exhilaration coursed through him. Being mentored by the Academy's dean was a dream for many, and Zayn was privileged to experience it twice a month. Upon reaching the Hall of the Holy Sword, located at the sword summit of the Burial Mountain, Zayn was greeted by an ordinary outer disciple. Seeing Zayn's inner disciple attire, the disciple quickly showed respect.
Excuse me, what brings you here?
I come bearing an order from Dean Harrison to join the Hall of the Holy Sword as a sword wielder. I also seek a worthy sword from the Hall.
Standing at the gates of the hall, Zayn felt a wave of relief and thrill wash over him. The pain and humiliation he had endured to reach this point were incomparable. But now, as an inner disciple and sword wielder, his wounds began to heal. With the stakes higher than ever, Zayn knew every step had to be carefully calculated. He was determined to prove he deserved to be among the best. Zayn had finally reached the fabled Hall of the Holy Swords. This enigmatic place held immense significance in the world of martial arts and sword fighting, a birthplace of legends. Here, martial artists and sword wielders gained their true powers, but only a select few disciples, those who had proven their worth, could make it to these sacred halls. Standing in reverence, Zayn recalled Dean Harrison's words. Could he prove his worth? Could he secure a formidable sword? Zack, an outer disciple who was guiding Zayn, was respectful and wasted no time.
Hello? My name is Zack. Your token is correct. I'll register for you in person. Now, let me take you to the Valley of Sealed Swords in the Hall of the Holy Sword, where there are over 100,000 sealed swords.
100,000?
Zayn was slightly startled by the number. The Valley of the Sealed Swords was at the foot of the sword summit, a valley carved by a powerful art of sword. Not a blade of grass grew here, only boundless pits and rocks. Countless sealed swords were embedded in the rocks, each one unique, some resembling butcher's knives more than swords. Zayn followed Zack to the Valley of the Sealed Swords. As he was about to explore, a young man in blue battle clothes approached. The young man's eyes lit up with suspicion as he saw Zayn.
Are you Zayn?
And you are...
The name's Kurt. I'm the true disciple of Master Henry Wells. Master told me you'd come and asked that I help you get familiar with the place.
Kurt's carefree demeanor, his thick eyebrows and big eyes gave his smile a radiant air. He dismissed Zack and took over, eager to assist.
Did Master really send you here? It can't be a lie, can it? The token was indeed given by the Elder.
A little starlight appeared in Kurt's eyes as he wrapped an arm around Zayn's shoulder, laughing boldly.
I can't believe you've been handpicked by the Dean himself. You'll be a big shot in the future. Zayn, if there's anything you don't understand, just ask me. I've been in the Hall of the Holy Sword for 3 years. I know every inch of this place.
With Kurt's friendly offer, Zayn was glad to have him as a guide.
Senior Kurt, may I ask, what's the purpose of the Hall of the Holy Sword, and how is it related to the Five Spirit Sect?
You don't know? The rumor is that the 5 patriarchs of the Five Spirit Sect had the 5 Spirits bloodline. Not just in the Yarrow Kingdom, but across the continent. You won't find anything comparable. But later, a Red Sky Supermaster killed them, and their bloodline was sealed 100,000 swords. To extract the bloodline, we must empty the sword will from all 100,000 swords. That's the only way to restore our sect's glory.
Zayn nodded, absorbing the surprising history of the Five Spirit Sect. As they walked, he learned more shocking details from Kurt. The sword will on the sealed swords could be broken, Over hundreds of years, less than 20,000 swords had been drawn. At specific intervals, the sect chose candidates to attempt drawing the king's sword. If successful, they might obtain a trace of the five spirits' bloodline, a tremendous blessing. Soon they reached the edge of a cliff where an ancient, dark giant sword stood, emanating a desolate red aura. Even after centuries, the scent of blood still lingered.
Is this the king's sword of the Valley of the Sealed Swords?
That's right. If we can pull the king's sword out, the seal on the five spirits' bloodline will be completely nullified. The sword will, of all 100,000 swords, will dissipate.
Kurt's expression turned somber as he spoke. The recovery of the five spirits' bloodline was a significant opportunity, but the existence of the sealed swords had also elevated their disciples' skills in the art of sword.
All right, Zayn. Master said you wanted a good sword, I'll take you to see them. But whether you can get one depends on your own ability.
Kurt led Zayn to a section with high-quality swords. The sealed swords here were scattered, each exuding powerful sword will. Zayn realized it would take him at least half a year to absorb one fully. As they stepped into the area, strong sword energy formed around them, lingering in the valley. Occasionally, the wailing or cursing of sealed swords could be heard, as if they had gained spiritual intelligence.
The Yang Sword, a genuine energy artifact, has a formidable sword will and harbors a strong killing intent. The Nine-Skill Sword, also a genuine energy artifact, emits a razor-sharp sword radiance. And the Water Spring Sword, favored by women, has a purity rivaling the vast sea.
Zayn absorbed the information, pondering which sword to choose. Suddenly, a powerful desire surged within him, as if something within his dragon's spirit body was awakening. Among the sea of sealed swords, Zayn spotted a unique item, a sword as blue as ice, as thin as a cicada's wing. It emitted a sword will stronger than any other, surrounded by a faint frost. The closer he got, the stronger his desire became.
Huh? Good taste, Zayn. I didn't expect you'd actually find the Dragon Blood Sword.
Dragon Blood Sword?
Yes. It's rumored that this sword was once stained with diluted Azure Dragon's blood. It's extremely powerful, unmatched among these sword-sealing masters. But its sword will is difficult to control, and a trace of green dragon blood is not easily tamed by ordinary people.
Kurt sighed, then continued.
I think you should choose another sword. This one's not for everyone.
Zayn smiled, understanding why his body reacted so strongly. This sword, containing diluted Azure Dragon blood, was the perfect nourishment for his dragon spirit body.
No need, just this one.
Zayn rolled up his sleeves and grabbed the sword's hilt. Instantly, he was frozen. A thick layer of ice formed on his palm, and he felt a sharp, biting pain.
Wait!
Kurt tried to stop Zayn, but Zayn's movements were too quick. He was excited and impatient, feeling as if destiny had brought this sword to him. His determination to prove himself worthy of the Dragon Blood Sword only grew stronger. Zayn gritted his teeth, enduring the sharp pain. The cold threatened to freeze his entire arm, but he could feel the immense power within the sword.
This is nothing. I can't handle.
As Zayn and Kurt stood in the heart of the Hall of the Holy Sword, excitement radiated from Kurt's eyes. He could barely contain his exhilaration. Zayn was relieved that he had proven Dean Harrison's trust in him right, and looked forward to hearing what the Dean would say when he got the news. This was probably one of the best days of his life in a long time. He had secured a place in the academy, was selected by the best mentor, found a friend he could count on, and lastly, obtained a powerful weapon. He gripped the Dragon Blood Sword firmly by its hilt, looking at Kurt when suddenly, a majestic red sword descended from the sky. And Zayn felt as though a colossal hand had grabbed him. His entire body tensed, and his blood essence ignited, making it feel like his flesh was being torn apart and destroyed. It was as if millions of blades were slashing at him simultaneously. The terrifying sword momentum roared in Zayn's head, nearly causing him to collapse. Exerting great will, Zayn managed to stay conscious and standing.
sea-engulfing curse.
A big dragon face inexplicably formed on Zayn's palm, where he had gripped the dragon blood sword. The moment it appeared, it fell into a state of frenzy, like a starving beast attacking its prey. The diluted blood of the azure dragon, hidden inside the dragon blood sword, sensed the crisis. A red line of blood struggled within the torrent of sword will, like a fish trying to escape a hunter's net. But the power of the sea-engulfing curse was too strong. The more the blood struggled, the closer it neared the trap. Finally, it developed a trace of spiritual intelligence. Choosing to fight rather than surrender, it transformed into a red fish, rushing toward the sea-engulfing curse that Zayn had summoned from his will, only to be swallowed instantly. Once the azure blood was fully absorbed by the curse, the roaring and slashing sounds from the sky stopped instantly. Having successfully absorbed the blood essence of the azure dragon, Zayn's body heated up. The discomfort vanished, and the previously powerful sword momentum was now under his control. The dragon blood sword, once a threatening, ownerless weapon, now had a new master. Its sword momentum responded to Zayn's thoughts and commands as if it were made for him. He could feel his dragon spirit bonding with the sword and becoming one. His vital energy, which had been somewhat depleted due to the strain of his struggle with the sword, had now started to restore. The remaining sword momentum and blood essence were not substantial enough to pose a threat, and Zayn felt confident that the sword would respond to his command from now on.
Let's finish this.
With a focused expression, Zayn swallowed the remaining sword momentum. The sword in his body started cooling down as he brushed off sweat from his forehead. Zayn had been through many unexpected things in the past few years, but this was something he never wished to do again. The pain he had endured made his body numb. However, the excitement of owning such a powerful sword kept him going. Zayn pulled the dragon blood sword from the rock, leaving Kurt wide-eyed and astonished. The dragon blood sword slid out freely from the rock with a booming crack. Zayn lifted it high in the air and swung it from side to side, testing its balance.
Unbelievable. For decades, no one has succeeded in taming the dragon blood sword. Yet you've done it in one step. You must be someone special. That's a fact. Now I see why Dean Harrison appointed you as one of his disciples.
Kurt finally understood why the Dean had made an exception for Zayn. The dragon blood sword felt exceptionally light in Zayn's hand. Its blade, thin as a cicada's wing, gleamed under the sunlight, emitting a faint blue light. Its sharp edges seemed to cut light itself, reflecting a multitude of colors in all directions. For an ordinary person, it was impossible even to grab the sword, as its cold energy would instantly freeze their hands and turn them into ice. Yet despite being nourished by the blood essence of the azure dragon for years, it didn't harm Zayn's hand anymore. That threat had been overcome, albeit at great risk. With a wave of his hand, a cold flame burst out, instantly forming a huge piece of frost on the ground. The power of the sword was incomparable. It was indeed a high-category weapon, meant to be wielded only by the most trained martial artists.
As expected of a genuine energy artifact. Good sword.
Kurt stood staring at Zayn, both envious and admiring. Zayn had achieved what many had failed to do. In his eyes, Zayn had become very respectable, not someone to make an enemy of. They chatted for a while, eliminating the sword will of the other sealed swords. Zayn even pulled out another sword, swallowing its will.
Obtaining the sword's momentum greatly enhances one's cultivation.
Now satisfied with his progress and joyous with the new weapon that now clung to his back, Zayn felt ready to explore the other areas of the Hall of the Holy Swords. Feeling a new understanding of the art of sword, Zayn left the Valley of Sealed Swords and headed for the Scripture Hall. As a newly promoted inner disciple, he had the chance to select new cultivation skills and martial arts techniques. The techniques he had seen his opponents use would now also be at his disposal to master and leverage against them. The gap between the foundation level and the intermediate level was vast, requiring the condensation of an essence pill. Only the elders and select disciples of the Titan Academy had reached this level. Thus, Zayn needed to carefully consider his choices. A wrong selection of skills and techniques could cost him dearly and make him lose the trust of his mentors at the Academy. The Scripture Hall was unique, built on a floating island. As Zayn approached on the wind glider, he saw nothing but dense white clouds surrounding the island. An azure light emitted from a serene-looking pagoda structure, surrounded by a powerful rune formation. After seeing the Valley of Swords, the sight of the Scripture Hall was a welcome change for Zayn. It was a beautiful yet simple-looking structure, and its sight instantly filled Zayn's heart with peace. As Zayn approached, he sensed the presence of multiple intermediate-level practitioners nearby, which made him feel a horrifying pressure. The moment he landed on the grounds of the Scripture Hall, a powerful force marked everyone present, ensuring that any act of rebellion or evil intent would result in immediate death. This was not a place to trifle with, and it had many safeguards to keep the secrets it held within its walls safe. Smoothly entering the barrier, Zayn arrived at the pagoda's Scripture Hall. There was no one guarding the gate, but as he reached to push it open, an ethereal and powerful voice echoed in his mind.
Who's there? State your name, your academy, and the martial arts you seek.
I am Zayn, a new inner disciple of the Azure Dragon Academy. I seek an art of sword, martial art technique, and body refining skill.
Go to the left, second floor. Do not linger or wander or face the consequences.
The heavy door opened on its own. As he walked inside, Zayn found himself in a completely different world. A boundless blue lake stretched out before him. Stepping onto the surface of the lake, he watched as ripples spread from his feet, disturbing the serene water. The lake was crystal clear, revealing ordinary fishes and shrimp darting about, their movements graceful and mesmerizing. Towering lotus flowers swayed gently, their petals vibrant and full of life. The scene was so picturesque and tranquil, it felt as though he had stepped into a living painting. Engrossed in the beauty, he almost forgot his purpose for a moment. However, the stern warning of the voice at the gates echoed in his mind, snapping him back to reality. Slowly and carefully choosing his path, he followed the voice's instructions, climbing the water stairs to the second floor. It was still the same serene lake, but now it was adorned with crystal water droplets suspended in the air, each the size of a fist. Within each droplet was a small, gleaming token, floating as if held by invisible threads of magic.
Touch the token to see the introduction of the cultivation method and martial arts technique. Grasp it if you like it. Withdraw if not. Remember, you only have 1 hour.
Zayn's heart raced with anticipation. The lake was vast, and with tens of thousands of droplets to explore. He knew an hour would barely scratch the surface. The challenge ahead felt exhilarating, pushing his excitement to new heights. He wondered what lay in store for him and whether he would be able to gain the technique that he sought.